And we're back. So we're another episode of Manager's Corner at Indie Pop headquarters. I'm Ben, your host. I'm with my really, really, really good friend, Corey Smyth. I've known this guy. He's damn near a mentor to me in the music business. I've known him since the 90s. We go back like that, like crack, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there was a lot of crack in the 90s.
Back like crack. So Corey, you're like a legend in what we do, pretty much. I mean, I definitely look to you for advice on things. We've done a lot of fun stuff together, but can you just like explain how you even got into the music business and how that even how that started?
Okay. Well, first, thanks for having me.
Of course.
Love this guy. Literally, I was dancing as a kid. Like that was like one of the things to do in the early 90s and 88. Like around 88, 89, I was dancing a lot. And then 1990, I was on my way to college, and I ended up meeting a guy in Atlanta named Dallas Austin through one of my best friends, Kamar Alfred. And he was starting a label called Rowdy Records, and
big shout out to Dave Gates.
Yeah, shout out Dave Gates.
I saw Dave Gates knock somebody out in the club once, just so you know.
Dave Gates was a real one, for sure. Dave Gates was a real
shout
one.
out to Dave Gates, seriously.
But yeah, Rowdy Records was like this indie label that Clive Davis was distributing through Arista, and he had a group called Highland Place Mobsters that I was a dancer for Highland Place Mobsters, and he was doing TLC at the time, and I was helping choreograph stuff for them. And it's like, and they had us all at this little, I don't know, this circle stage. It was like a rehearsal spot. And I remember Highland Place was doing a showcase, and that showcase went really bad.
Like, what happened?
Chip got naked on stage, and I was like, yeah, this ain't gonna work. I remember thinking to myself, yeah, the dancing thing may not be where the money's at. And I called Dallas, and I remember asking him, I was like, hey, like, do dancers get contracts? Because we're about to go on tour. And he was like, no. I was like, well, what happens if I hurt myself? I used to have to do this, it's like a backflip, but it's like a sleeper on stage. I was like, what happens if I hurt my hand? And he was like, you go home. Wow. So I was like, yeah, I don't want to do this too much more. So then I went back home that summer, and I hooked up with Nicole DeSain and Bruce Carbone at Mercury, and I took an internship in the marketing department there. Wow. And I started doing street team, like putting up posters, because I was like running the clubs in New York. I was out and about a bunch, and it was a group called Ill and Out Scratch and Yak Fu Front were the groups that I was out there doing street promotion for.
What year was that?
I mean, it's gotta be 91. Yeah, like 1990, 1991. And then I came back to school after that summer, and I was like, and I had just sold the baseball card for $20,000. I had a 1952 Mickey Mantle baseball card. And then I was like, yo, I'm gonna be a manager. So it was like me, Shaka Zulu. There's a couple other cats, because Jeff Dixon was Shaka's older brother, and so Jeff was giving us advice. So it was like a small group of us that like, we're gonna do this thing. And everyone was like so excited that I had this money. You know what I mean? Like
the money from the Mickey Mantle card.
Yeah, and it was like
20 grand?
$20,000 at 18 years old.
I mean, that's like $1 million.
Yeah. So then I'm rolling back up with Dallas like, yo, what's good? I'm a manager.
I just managed to make $20,000.
Yeah, I just managed to make this money. I'm a manager. And yeah, like he had this, he was about to sign this group called Y'all So Stupid that needed a manager. That was my break in the industry. Walking into meetings, not knowing what the fuck I was talking about at 18, 19 years old, and managing a group signed to Rowdy Arista. Yeah. They were the thing that allowed me to see behind the curtain.
Yeah. That
was the first time I saw the world of what we were seeing in videos and in TVs on that side, and sitting in meetings. I mean, being in meetings with Clive Davis early on was incredible, you know.
I mean, I'm
being
sure
in those,
instrumental. You really got to learn from like some greats.
yeah, I mean, LA and their team, and then I was always so creative in my thought process. I don't think that I did business by default, in the sense that I thought being part of this creative thing was what I always wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
The output is what I always enjoyed,
Yeah.
not the nuances of it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we met, I was working at Raucous as a radio promoter.
Yeah.
You managed Quali. How did you like discover Quali? Like, how did that?
Literally, so that story is like, my life is always gonna play out like Forrest Gump. Like, it's just literally like how is this person in all these different scenarios? Because
Yeah.
it doesn't really add up, but it's just the truth of the matter. Like, I was just always at the right place at the right time. I had left Atlanta. It wasn't working for me there. You Also Stupid had got dropped, and I had signed a couple other things through a production deal I had at Tommy Boy, where my partner was this kid named Xavier X. X got the House Indicator, and we had a kid named DJ Kizzy Rock. Mm-hmm. DJ Kizzy Rock had a really big bass record. Like, it was popping in the strip clubs, and it was like I was doing this circuit of like every weekend with him, like going to multiple strip clubs playing these records and getting cash, and eventually I think my grandfather got sick and he passed away, and I think my mom thought I was selling drugs, and I was just like, yo, I just need to change something. Mm-hmm. I just wasn't feeling great for some reason, you know, like it was money coming in, but I just didn't feel great. And so I said, I'm gonna go back to New York. Went back to New York, started doing parties. Mm. And Mark Ronson was my DJ.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and Mark was just legitimately, he was Mark the Spark Ronson one week, or Spark Ronson the next week. And Mark was just a kid that I found at Mercury Lounge. You know, because they were like, because you know, New York, you're out and about, like, we're just all moving, right? So one day someone was like, yo, there's this white boy who's killing it at Mercury Lounge. He plays the illest records. So, and I was like, word? They're like, yo, you gotta come check him. I went to Mercury Lounge and Mark was killing it with like his own vinyl and like the mix. And I was like, so I went up to the booth and I remember asking him how much they were paying him. And I was like, I have a spot at Buddha Bar. I was like, how much they paying you? And I was like, I basically was like, I'll pay you double, basically. I was like, he was like, cool, I'll come DJ.
But could you pay him double?
Hell yeah. I think they paid him like $100. It was like, it was Mercury Lounge. Yeah. He was getting like, he probably was getting $50 probably. He came and started DJing my party, and it was me and Renee John Stanley, and the party blew up. Like, our party was legitimately like the most popping party twice a week. Mm-hmm. And Maceo from De La Soul shows up, because back then used to leave flyers at places. Remember, Tommy Boy had that desk, the front desk, where you leave flyers. So we left our flyers there. We used to make really dope flyers. Like, that was, once again, our creative thing. Like, we're gonna make the dopest flyer. Like, our flyers are gonna stand out. Yeah. And Maceo comes through. After the party, he's just like, yo, is this your party? I'm like, yeah. He's like, yo, I want to DJ here. And I was like, okay, for sure. And so then I did Christmas Eve, and we killed it. I had Fat Man Scoop as my doorman. Like, it was just like a real random party, but it blew up, and Maceo was like, oh, this shit was amazing. From that point, he was like, yo, I want you to meet the rest of the guys in my group, because we're looking for a new manager. And then boom, they're about to go on tour, and I met them on tour. We went on the road, and by the time I came back from tour, I was their manager.
De La Soul's manager. De
La Soul's manager. And then we started working on it. They delivered the album for Stakes is High. So that's the first record I worked with them on.
Wow.
That's how I met Mos. The day I met Mos, we were arguing about the Onyx album. The Onyx album came out, and Mos was like, oh man, something. And I was just like, yo, I like this shit. You know what I mean? And he was just like, I remember we were beefing about the Onyx album, and I try to think, I remember I called Mason, I was like, yo, who is this kid? And he started telling me all this stuff that Mos was doing, and I was like, oh, okay. And I remember Mos was like, I don't have a manager, and I approached him, and I was like, well, I could get you some gigs and I could get you some money in Japan. Because we were going to Japan. I used to go to Japan like 3 times a year. Me and Mace would go for a day and DJ at Harlem and come back home. There's a club in Japan, in Tokyo called Harlem. We used to DJ there and bounce back. Because it was just like, they're paying him ridiculous amounts of money to DJ. And I was like, I could get you a deal. And I knew Wendy Goldstein was looking for new artists at Geffen at the time. Mm-hmm. So Most was like, sure, give me a deal. So I got him a deal offer at Geffen, and he didn't want to do it. He was like, nah, let's not do that. There's this company called Raucous.
Most said there's a company called Raucous.
I promise you. He was like, there's this company called Raucous that lets you own your masters.
They were given master ownership rights?
Yeah, those Black Star masters belong to Most and Qua. So Brian and Jared cough it back up, because that was the deal. He knew them through Kweli, because he and Qua.
So Most knew Brian and Jared.
Because Qua knew them.
Ah.
They were like, oh, we're working on this project with Kweli, and Most was like, me and Qua talked about doing a joint project together called Black Star.
Gotcha.
Most, I've never forget as long as I live. Most was like, okay, cool, I'm down to do it. We had a sidebar. I'm like, cool. They bring out Kweli's and High Tech's contract. And literally, Most signs that contract, and they gave us a check.
In the office?
Yeah, that literally, probably that same day, for sure. And Most didn't even sign his real name. He wrote Most Def. The contract, he wrote Most Def on that contract, for sure. I remember it, like, and it wasn't even his own. It was no other signature line. He wrote it on under their signature lines. Yeah, like, I remember that shit as long as I live. And they gave us a check, and we started working on the Black Star album. And I was working with Most. I still didn't know Kweli.
So you not even met Kweli at this time?
No.
So did they basically put a group together in that
Most and Qua had that idea.
Okay.
Yeah, that like,
Got it.
And they were fans of Most. So then at some point in time, Black Star is now, Most is going to the studio. A couple of times I would drop him off at the studio. I think I got arrested dropping him off at the studio one time because I didn't have a driver's license. And I was driving in Brooklyn to pick him up, and the cops pulled me over. And they eventually let me out. And I remember Most, the guy was like, yo, I think your man's famous. I was in the jail cell, and I was like, yeah, he's on Cosby Mysteries. I remember being like, can you get me out of here though? Yeah. And but yeah, I would drop him over to the studio, and I'm just working, you know, like, I think I was really back and forth going to the studio in Manhattan with De La, and Most and Qua were in Brooklyn. So I would check in, and I think Renee one day hit me like, yo, you should meet Kweli. And I think I met him at Tramps. Really, the first time I had a real conversation with him, he was trying to get Common to get on a song called Respiration.
Yeah.
Right? And Derek Dudley was not letting Kweli on the bus. Like, he didn't know him. You know what I'm saying? And I remember going in and out the bus, like, and I was like, yo, he was like, I'm trying to get Common this record. And I was like, yo, get on the bus. You know what I mean? And Kweli was, you know, young and polite. You know, he wasn't like swinging ego. You know what I mean? So he was like, and I was like, I got him on the bus, told Derek who he was, got him on the bus. And then after that, I think he and High Tech asked me to meet them in Brooklyn, and I met them at Santi's crib. And they're like, yo, we want you to be our manager. And that's how I started really working with them. It was Reflection Eternal was the gig. Yeah. And then Most and Shaka were like, we're gonna do this Most Def project. And so me, Shaka, had Black Star together. Not Shaka Zulu, Shaka who passed away. Yeah. Shaka Rashid. And then,
Shaka was a real one.
Shaka was the realest one. Shaka had Q-Tip and Most after me and Most went our separate ways, and we were just doing the Black Star thing. And he took Most as a solo artist. And man, yeah, Shaka was...
Him at Headquarters.
Shaka was the realest of the real. God rest the dead, yo.
So here's like an interesting thing. So you got into the music business in the early 90s. I got in towards the end of the 90s. And we're sitting here in like 2020, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I say it, I think you are part of this, but for me, I feel like of the people that were in my class coming up in the music business, there's not a lot of me left.
Yeah, correct.
I think that like when I look at like my peers and the people that were around in the late 90s and early 2000s, they either really didn't take music as like a pure business, and also they didn't adjust with the times. You know what I'm saying? Like, so what do you think is like, why do you think you've been able to have that sort of like longevity? Because I mean, that's like 30 years.
20 something years, 26 years, right?
Yeah.
So the guys in De La were older than me, so they gave me a blueprint, you know, like, and that blueprint legitimately influenced how I focused on all the other acts. At that point, there was so much of an influx of calls about De La and the way I had hustled it. I had got us our Levi's campaign. They were they were in Times Square in these big Levi's ads. We did an Apple campaign early, but no one else was doing Apple campaigns. I got a lot of these marketing ideas, which everyone does branded stuff now, but we were really early in, you know, like the Levi's campaign was super early.
I remember that.
And so I was always able to get Mos and Qua or Mos or Quali individually into something based off of the fact that De La had given me this blueprint, and I was working with a group that everyone loved.
Yeah.
So if someone was calling for a show and they only had 15 grand, I'd be like, De La's not taking that, but I got these two kids, they got this Black Star record, and that's how we developed the brand. So slowly but surely, it was I learned how to develop touring artists. And it's a process that most people can't fathom or understand, how you have to go step by step. It's very indie pop. It's very, no pun intended. Through that time period, I got successful, and then the next iteration of it was, okay, here's another younger group of it. Like Reese was the first real young one. Like Reese was maybe 6 years my junior, you know? And the first time I really jumped back into youth culture again is really like Vince.
Yeah, Vince Staples.
Yeah, Vince Staples is like, that put me, meeting him at 17 was a gift, because he was a quiet kid that I believe needed someone to believe in him. I don't think he cared about any of it at that moment. He was around a group of people who were making music, and he was just like, hey, I'll do it too. And then here I come, probably with these grandiose ideas and saying, hey, can you show up for this, or can you do this? And they showed up at South by Southwest, and they did a show. They opened up for Quali and Buckshot at my Blacksmith Duck Down showcase at South by Southwest that year. And I had him go on stage, and I mean, he wasn't being cocky, but he was definitely looking at the audience like, you guys just don't get it. And he was rapping and rapping, and I remember him just looking to the side of the stage, looking at me like, because the audience wasn't, they were like, who's this kid? And basically probably thinking it's trash, right? And but after the show, I was like, I could work with that. I remember me and Drew Howe on the side of the stage. Drew was like, yo, I like him. Because he didn't care. He was up there like, I'm up here, you're down there, it doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? Like, that was the attitude. And I was like, and he always looked at me and would listen. It was something about, you know, like a lot of kids in when they're 18, their late teens, they do that scattered eye thing where they don't really look you eye to eye when they're talking. And he would always like have a deadpan stare. Like, you're talking to him, he's like focused. And I was like, I could work with this. And you know, through time and a little bit of effort and finding the right path, he called me one day, and we were just trying to find some production. I had sent him some stuff from Chad Hugo, because I was working with Chad at the time, and then David Banner, I was working with David also. But he called me, he was like, yo, I'm at Mac's crib. Yo, Max got some beats, and Max says he wants to work on a project with me.
Mac Miller.
Mac Miller, sorry. Mac Miller. And I was like, Mac produces? He was like, yeah, you know, it's kind of cool. And I was like, all right, I'll get on a plane and I'll come this weekend. Flew back to LA. I was in New York at the time. Flew back to LA, went to Mac's crib, sat with Mac. And Mac was like, yo, I'll play you some stuff we started working. They started playing me these songs they have been working on in Mac's studio out in the Valley, right? And I was like, this shit is dope. I could work with this. So I'm like, yo, I gotta get this kid a deal. So I called Joey. I'm like, Joey's the president of Def Jam. I'm gonna call Joey. Joey's like, I'll take the meeting. I'm in town. Boom. he and Vince go to the meeting, and Joey's listening to the record, and Vince is doing Vince's deadpan thing. He's like, the music's playing, and he's just like, you know, being a teenager, like just not excited about nothing that's going on. And Joey was like, yo, why do I feel like you hate your own music? And so Joey was like, yo, can you give me a second? So Vince stepped out the room. He was like, yo, I've never been in a meeting before where a rapper does not say their lyrics, just stares into dead space while they're playing your song. He's not trying to sell me the song. I was like, nah, because he's like, the music speaks for itself. You either like it or not. He's not going to do a dance for you. That's just not who he is. Yeah. And he was like, yo, I want to do it. Yeah. I was like, perfect.
Cool. So going into the next segment, if you follow me on Instagram, I have a hashtag called Big Drops Only. Yeah. And what a big drop is basically is like when something massive happens. Like, what do you think, like in your career and your life, is your biggest drop?
Oh, 100% Nyla. Yeah, my daughter, that's my big, yo.
My daughter's my biggest drop too.
Yeah, like what do you mean? Like, yeah, it's not even a question. Like, I don't think most people can fathom how much you internalize their life, their success, being a manager, right?
Yeah, it's insane.
It's really insane. And it's like having a child. It's because you're really giving them all this love, all this advice, all this attention, all this time. So the moment my daughter was born, I was like, oh my God, I can't even imagine the fact that I love this person that much. I've never loved a thing, a person, anything as much as I loved this little girl. So her name is Nyla, which is New York and Los Angeles, because I'm from New York, Shadi's from LA. And then we had met in Austin, Texas. So her middle initial is Austin. Her middle name is Austin. And then my last name is Smith. And then I always wanted her initials to be Nas. So it's NAS. And so that's why she's got you can follow her, hashtag Nas for short.
Nas for short.
Yeah, that's her hashtag, right? So then when the new one came, number 2, I was like, we're going to do it again. So we got Nova Ali Smith.
Yeah, sick.
And so, you know, shout out to, you know, my homie Nas forever. You know what I mean? But yeah, like, yeah, it's just what it is. You know, I mean, I believe in this hip hop thing like no one's business, man. It's giving me
everything.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where people tend to talk about it as if it's a subculture, but it's just culture.
Yeah, it is culture at this point.
Yeah, but it's been this way for a while. It's been this way since, like, we live in a world where you can't show me one thing that's not influenced by this hip hop thing. Can't. It's non-existent.
I agree. Well, before we wrap, I'd like to do this thing. It's kind of like a lightning round question.
Okay, go for it.
White Castle or In-N-Out?
Well,
come on, man, faster.
Well, but I don't eat beef, so I'm gonna have to say, but I'm gonna say White Castles.
Okay. Harlem or Brooklyn?
Harlem.
Harlem.
What? Yo, you asked that question a million times over. I can say it as fast as fuck. Harlem.
Okay. Range Rover or Mercedes?
Range.
Coldplay or Radiohead?
Radiohead.
Oh, I can't even believe you said that, bro. Yeah. You introduced me to Coldplay while we were going snowboarding. But see, that's really weird to me. That's a weird.
But the reason I said because
I Coldplay, think you should. I don't agree.
Coldplay made really palatable records, right? And I loved Coldplay. Like, I still do love Coldplay. But Radiohead is the grandfather of it all. Yeah, like, they're the OG. So that's why I got to give it to them. But if I'm going down the slopes, I'm rocking that Coldplay.
Okay.
Like,
so going down the slopes, snowboard or inline small feet?
inline shorties, yo. Yeah, like the K2 shorties going down backwards. Like what?
And last one, Apple or Spotify?
Apple, because I'm just an Apple fiend.
Wow.
But Spotify has better playlists.
Yeah. They're pretty good.
Yeah.
All right, well, yo, thanks for coming by.
And everyone, please understand, this is Ben Baby Jesus. Start a new hashtag, Ben Baby Jesus. That's the hashtag. I dubbed that, Ben Baby Jesus. That's what it is. He used to have the longest hair. Like, he used to look like the white Jesus for sure.
Before and before.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Awesome. That was like great, man.
All day, bro. Anything for you, bro.
Yeah.